Hello and welcome to another live windsurf coaching. It is December 4th and I haven't sailed this week, but have you? That is the question. We've got some good stuff to go over in the group. Let me know if you sailed this week. I'm just going to pass this guy off to his mom. I'm going to say hi. Yeah. Hi, Greg. Oh, Greg, I'm so sorry to hear about your rib. That looked super painful. You want to say bye?
Yeah.
Say bye-bye. Say bye. Say hi. Say bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, I'm going to pass him off.
Bye-bye.
Then I'm back.
Bye-bye.
All right, I'm back. Hey, Dom. Yeah, Greg. Man, I'm so sorry to see your injury. That looked painful. Ouch. Ouch. If you guys haven't been following, Greg broke his rib on a small crash where then the water pushed his harness hook up into his rib. Ouch. Hey, Axel, no sailing until March. Oof. That's a long time. Hey, Jörg, Kåre. Kåre, when do you leave for Cape Town? I saw you've been doing some training. That's good. All right, you guys keep telling me how you're doing. I'm going to pull up the Facebook group, and we'll jump into that. Hey, Christophe, Tomasz. All right, let me pull up the group. All right, here we are. So let's just jump into this. Nice, Carl. That sounds fun. All right. So, just one little housekeeping thing. Thanks to everyone who supports on the Patreon. The Patreon is, I brought the cost down. So if you want to join the newsletter, the cost has come down to 10 a month, and you can find that at patreon.com/GrahamEzzy. And I'm going to make a few other changes actually to how the newsletter is done. So for the next month or so, 2 months, everything's going to kind of be how it's been. But I realized a few things that need to change, but that probably will take me a couple months to implement them. Like all of these things, you know, we're experimenting, we're rolling with the different platforms as they come. Hey, Matt, Jeff, Ragnar, Jörg, and thanks to everyone who is supporting the live stream. I'll throw it up in the chat through the Patreon. So, those names came out really weird. Sorry, I had it all formatted nicely, but the program pushes everyone together. So thank you, Kåre, Christopher, Axel, Greg, Sam, John, Tomasz, Laura, Matthias, Fritz, Nick, Samuli, Steen, Christophe, David, Dom, Dennis, Mario, Cedric, Ragnar, Matt, Jörg, Tomasz, Jürg, Evgeny, and Eric. So thank you guys for supporting by joining the newsletter. You can do that on the Patreon site. All right, let's jump into the coaching. All right, let me get this sorted by date and just roll from there. All right, so Eric, last Sunday I broke a mast. Basically went a bit too close to a reef where a somewhat slabby wave suddenly rose up in front of me, leaving me no way to escape. Where was this, Eric? It hit me, I went down, and when I resurfaced, I saw my mast was broken. So swim of shame and end of session. No shame. There's no shame in breaking a mast. It's just part of the game. Two things. Masts are somewhat expensive and probably the least exciting equipment I can buy. Harness lines are the same thing, but a lot cheaper. So do people generally have two sets of masts in case of breakage? I mean, I probably lost an hour sailing, but imagine I was on a longer trip. in many ways, this was a non-event because I chose to go close to the reef. So this was more of a freak accident than me losing control, if that makes sense. Yes, breaking mast is part of wave sailing, but not every mast is made the same. And, you guys who have been following the stream for a long time know that I'm not pitching the equipment that I make. I'm not trying to sell it to you guys. But the Ezzy masts are pretty strong, and I don't break masts very often. Every mast can break. The Ezzy mast can break. Every mast can break. But I break a lot fewer masts than other people, and I see other wave sailors in heavy spots using Ezzy masts in different sail brands. They might not be using Ezzy sails. And we did a lot of testing on those masts to make sure that they're strong. And so not every mast is built the same. And if you get a really lightweight 100% carbon mast, it's also not going to be as strong as a 90% mast most of the time. Yep, the mast can hit the bottom. I mean, that's definitely one way that the mast break. I mean, there's the main way that a mast breaks when you're wave sailing is that it pogos in the bottom and the wave pushes it over and it snaps. Maybe it gets stuck in the reef. But there are a few best practices as well for taking care of your mast and how you hold the gear when you're getting worked to help make sure that the mast doesn't break. Hey, Den. How are you doing? So what are the best practices? So one of them is when you're getting worked, you want to make sure that the mast is pointing into the wave with the luff pointing into the wind. And I teach this position in all of the master classes that we do. And it's a safety position. The gear then becomes like a sled and you can just ride the whitewater in. If the mast is pointing into the beach or opposite direction of the wave, it's the worst position to be in because then the wave picks up the board and it flips it over the mast, and that tip of the mast can hit the bottom. It can get stuck in the reef, can get stuck in the rocks, and it's likely to break. It's hard to hold on to the gear when it's flipping like that. If the mast is parallel with the breaking wave, it's better than pointing into the beach, but you can still get kind of tumbled around. It still isn't great. So you really want to have that mast tip pointing into the wave. You want to avoid that somersault, that pogo of the mast. You don't want it to pole vault on the bottom. And the second best practice is about how you take care of your masts. Now, the masts are actually very fragile. I'm shocked sometimes when I see people throwing their masts or just dropping their masts on the ground. You really don't want to do that because what happens is you get a little crack. You drop your mast and it lands on a little rock or a piece of asphalt that's sticking up, and it gets just a little crack in the glass from that rock, and the integrity of the mast is forever compromised. So you want to treat your mast like glass. And so they're really strong in terms of compression and everything else. But if you get little cracks in them, little chips in them, or not chips, but like from landing on something sharp, you can destroy the mast. Basically, you create a weak spot that then the mast can break at some point. If you go on the rocks somewhere, like you're getting work like a Hokipa, this can happen where you go on the rocks. That also is going to be bad for the mast. It might reduce the integrity of the mast. You can't always say for sure, but if I have a really heavy beating on the rocks on Maui, I normally put those masts in with the broken mast pile, and I don't use them, or at least I don't use them on big days. I'll use them on small days where if I break a mast, it's not that hard to swim in and the consequences aren't that big. But like I said, with my mass, we do a lot of development for durability and strength on the Ezzy mass, and I really don't break that many mass, so it's not something I have to think about much. Which brings me to your second point, which is, well, I guess it's this epilogue point or the PS point that I want to get to. You're saying that you were sailing a 4.7, which takes a 400 mass, but the newer model takes a 370, so you ordered a new 4.7 with the plans on getting another 370 mass. It solves two problems, backup mass for the sails. So that makes sense. So when I'm traveling, I'll often not take extra mass because, again, I have confidence in my mass. And so I think that's something that's important for you if you're into wave sailing, to make sure that the equipment that you're using, whether it's your masts or your booms or your sails, is something that you're confident in. And I think it's important not to try to go as light as possible if that reduces the integrity of the gear and then your confidence in it. Now, I like light stuff and I try to find that balance. And with the sails, for example, where I'm actively involved in the development, that's a trade-off, but it's something that we've been able to really reduce the weight over the last few years. So the weight of the Ezzy sails have come down a lot. But that's something to think about when you're buying gear. It's often, it's can be a trade-off between lightweight and durable. And so if you want that peace of mind, just be conscious of that when you're buying gear. And then for traveling, like I'll take maybe a 370 and a 400 with me. And if I break a mast piece, I can use normally, like in a pinch, I could use, you say I break a 400 top, I could use the 400 bottom and a 370 top with more extension in my sail to get pretty close to the right mast and at least get on the water. I always, or not always, but I try to always travel with an extra boom. Not because I'm worried about my booms breaking. They don't normally. But if your boom breaks, that's the end of your trip. Whereas if you have a couple masts, I mean, if you use the wrong mast in your sail, you can still get on the water. But if your boom is broken, you can't. So normally in terms of doing trips, I'll take one board, two booms, a 370 and a 400, and like 3 sails. And then even if I break a sail, I could go on a bigger sail or whatever it is, at least get on the water if I have to. Hey, James. Hello to Sydney. One float and ride session on Tuesday. That sounds fun. Blasting runs on the lake on the 7.5. What are you working on the lake on the 7.5? Yeah, then adjustable top sails help as well for using different masts. Good point from Ragnar. Yeah, so Eric, do you feel like that answers your question? And don't be ashamed. There's no shame in it. Hey Hans, welcome. There's no shame in breaking a mast. It's just part of the game. All right. Next up, we've got this terribly sad post from Greg. He had a wipeout and broke his rib. Ouch. Luckily, Greg is a doctor. And I think he said he did the MRIs himself in these comments. Greg, I know you're in the chat. How does that work? How can you do the MRIs yourself? You say that? How do you say? You scanned yourself. Does that mean you have an assistant that scanned you in your office, or that you actually scanned yourself? If it's that you scanned yourself, I didn't know that was possible. That's wild. But ouch, 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 ouch. Yeah, interesting. So Greg has been using this sliding hook and wearing it really loose. I'm obviously an advocate of the loose harness. That's something I've talked about a lot on this channel and in the group. But I don't use the sliding hook. So I learned on a sliding hook. But when I decided that I wanted to wear a loose harness, and because I was loosening my harness more and more and more, and I liked how that felt, I switched to a fixed hook. And it took me a little bit to get used to it. but that's why I switched. I switched to a fixed hook because I wanted to wear the loose harness. So maybe the loose sliding hook just moves around too much and it can hit you like this. Like if you have a fixed hook, it's pretty fixed. It's not gonna flip back up and hit you. Greg, man, I'm so sorry. This looks so painful, and I hope that you heal up and you don't have much pain and you're back on the water soon. Ouch. Yeah, ouch, ouch, ouch. If you are looking to try other harnesses, you mentioned in your post that it's hard to find harnesses to try. I totally understand that. I can reach out to the Dakine rep in the UK and see if they'll do some demos. Let me write that down because that kind of makes sense for people. Can try them on. Yeah, I'll look into that. All right, next up, we've got this post from Ogus, who's having difficulty pointing the board more than parallel at the bottom turn. You can see in this video that he's looking at the wave tip as target, but failed to direct the board more vertical and take a tighter arc. Appreciate any tips. This looks beautiful. Where is this? Where is this? This looks awesome. So what do you guys think? What do you guys think Ogus needs to be doing differently? I've, of course, got my comments. You're going to hear them in a second, but Ogus wants to get more vertical on his bottom turns. What does he need to do? And where do you think this is? Is this Mauritius? That's maybe my guess, Mauritius. But where do you guys think it is? So I'll give you a second to think about it and check the chat. So James says he was working on fast tacks as always. Nice. How are your fast tacks going? Were you in the fast tack course that I did? Han says that durable is heavier. Not always, but sometimes it is. He doesn't mind weight and bulletproof gear, but lighter people dislike the heavier gear. It's one of those things where you have these trade-offs, but sometimes you can create something that's both lighter and stronger. And that's our goal often with the sails, with other things. With masts, though, often those really light masts are not going to be as strong as the 90% carbon mast that's a bit heavier, because it just has more of the resin in it, more fiberglass as opposed to carbon, and it's just a bit stronger. Yeah. James is saying to cut back more. Axel doesn't want to have a broken rib. Neither do I. Max is saying get more speed, lean forward. And yes, that is Mauritius. Kåre was saying wider grip. And he said that Greg says that his radiographer scanned him. So he didn't scan himself. That would have been interesting. I would love to know how that works. I've only had an MRI once, I think, when I injured my knee in 2020. Huge machines. And then Kåre says that Ogus needs to lean the body more into the turn, and getting low will help. All right, let's go back to the video. I think this first turn, or this is the second turn. The second turn is kind of the best one of all of them. I mean, it looks fun. I know you want to be getting more vertical, but it looks super fun. And Han said he already put his comments on Facebook, so we'll check that out. All right, so what do I think? There are a few things going on here. One, this particular wave, this particular day, doesn't look like it has a lot of power. And so what is happening is the wave is kind of crumbly on top. It's not pushing very much. And the water in front of the lip, because it doesn't have much power, because it's deep, is more straight rather than bold. right? You see that? Like this is not a bowl, it's like a straight line, like a slope, and the water surface is really choppy. That is going to make whatever you're trying to do more difficult. You can see that the wave, when he's coming up to the lip, looks like it's going to break and then it just stops. And that's why I always say that you really want to look at the bottom of the wave to determine what the top is going to do. And the same thing happens here. So there's not much power in that section. Here it starts to get a little bit smoother, right? You can see the water starts getting sucked flatter. That surface tension is increasing. There's a bit more bowl in the wave, and then you can see, okay, the wave's starting to break. There's more power. I don't know what this spot is like, but you'll find an easier time doing everything on the wave if you're in a part of the wave that has more power, more slope. You don't need to be where it's breaking. You don't have to be in the danger zone. But in this area where it kind of looks like it's going to break, but then doesn't, you're not going to have a lot of luck because wave sailing is, hey, Facebook user, I just scrolled up to kind of see who that is, but it doesn't show me. Wave sailing is taking that energy, or riding a wave is taking that energy of the wave and transferring it to board speed. And what this means is there isn't much energy in the wave. And so it's hard to ride up it. It's also like, it's difficult to turn, like bottom turn on a wave that's like this instead of like this. Like your board is designed to work in a wave like this. In a wave like this, you're pushing water on the rail in a way that's, it's just not designed, it's not designed to work. So this second turn, so I want to focus mainly on the first and second turn because on these two turns, the wave is setting up better than the other ones. And so if we look at the second turn, look how much smoother this water is than what we just saw before. And the wave is actually kind of pushing a little bit. It's still not really breaking, but it much more than here, whereas this kind of looks like a channel where the wave starts to kind of come up, but then it disappears. We've got all this chop and we don't have any bowl. And so that's a very difficult, it's just difficult to do turns. You're not going to do good turns on something like that. So what I recommend doing, instead of trying to do those turns, is get down the line, to travel down the wave to get to this part of the wave. Because as you can tell, this part of the wave does start to break and you're a little bit late for this section. And so if you were here earlier, you would have been able to get a turn or two in that area. So I don't know, again, what this spot is like. I haven't windsurfed there myself, but I don't think it's worth spending too much time trying to turn on this kind of wave where the bottom is choppy. You don't have that good bowl because your gear is not designed for that. So let's look at the technique in these first two turns because the wave is cleaner and it does have more power. Can you guys see what I mean about the wave? And this is huge. The fundamentals of wave sailing are wave selection, placement, and timing. And if you're in the wrong place on the wave or on the wrong wave, it's just not going to work. You have to have those three things in order to do anything decent. And the second part of this wave just doesn't. But the first part does. So let's look at this first turn. So the first thing that I see right off the bat is as you're dropping down, you're heading upwind. And that kills your speed. It makes it so that you have to do more of a turn in order to come back up the wave. And so you're making it harder for yourself. And then here you start sheeting in and anticipating the cutback. So the first thing I want you to do is not go upwind as you drop down the wave. So I want you to drop down the wave going a little bit down the line so that you're picking up speed and you're already starting to travel in the direction of your bottom turn. that keeps speed. It makes sure that you have less turn to actually do. And it helps you to see the wave. So like we just said, where you are on the wave is hugely important. It's one of the most important things. If you're in the wrong spot on the wave, nothing's going to work. Doesn't matter how good your technique is. Nothing's going to work. If you're in the wrong spot on the wave, nothing's going to work. I can repeat that 100 times. So, but it's hard to know where to go on the wave if you can't see it. If you're going upwind, it's hard to see down the line. So drop in, going down the line. You'll have more speed. You'll have less bottom turn circle to do, and you can see more of the wave to get your timing. Second, you want to sheet out more. And with that sheet out, get your body leaned over. There's two things you can think about for getting the body leaned over. I put this in the last video I posted on YouTube where I interviewed the Danish slalom racer, Sebastian Kornum. And he was saying the number one tip for doing carving jibes is to stick your butt out or to get your chest low. And it's the same as in a bottom turn. You want to stick your butt out, get your chest low, lean forward, try and touch your face to the water. And you want to be sheeting out because that will allow you to come at a tighter angle to the wind. As you start progressing and you do more of a powerful lay down bottom turn, you can sheet in these kind of conditions. But in the beginning, you want to make sure that you're sheeting out enough because you can do a good bottom turn where you're sheeting out the whole way through. Just look at Keith Taboul's bottom turns. That's what he's doing. But you can't do a good bottom turn if you're sheeting in the whole way through because then you can't come up the wave vertically. You can't come tight to the wind. And so when we're doing those hard sheet in bottom turns at Hokipa, we're sheeting in, but then we're sheeting out as we're coming up the wave. And so to make it simpler, just sheet out in the beginning and then come to the sheeting in later. But sheeting out allows you to come to a tighter angle to the wind and allows you to lean. It gives you that room to lean forward. So we've covered two main things: your placement on the wave, how you're dropping in, the sheeting out. Now, the last point is a little bit subtle, but huge. The wave should be doing the work of the cutback for you. The wave should be doing the work of the cutback for you. So you should not be muscling the cutback, which also means that you can commit more in your bottom turn. Because if you're thinking about doing the work of the cutback and you're anticipating the cutback as you're bottom turning, you're not able to commit to it as much. Your bottom turns will not be as vertical. So in order to get more vertical, you have to trust that the wave is going to push you back. The wave is going to do the work of that cutback for you. And so come up the wave, and then you just get on those heels, let the high five happen, and the power of the wave will push you back. Let's watch this one. The other thing, and we've said a lot, but a lot of good stuff, is you can look more. So you're looking with your head at the photographer who's like kind of down the line, and then you start looking kind of up here. I want to see you looking up on the top of the wave. So at this point, you're still looking up here. And I think now we've given you a lot of tips. I want to see what everyone else said. Greg is saying, come down the wave more for more acceleration. Yeah, I think that's kind of what I was saying. Yeah, some different technical points here. So, Oguz, if you're in the chat with us, I want to know what you think with these comments. And I want you to have the chance to put it into practice. That would be great. All right, let's move on. Next point. Free ride question of the week. When you guys enter the Facebook group, there's a question: are you more interested in wave sailing, free ride sailing, or freestyle? And a surprisingly large number of you guys are interested in freeride, which is super cool. So I would like to do more freeride content, posts, tutorials, whatever you want to call it, in the group. And so I did this question. What are you working on in your freeride? Rune was the only one that answered, and he ended up sparking some good discussion. And his question is no cam sail or 2-cam sail. I'll get into that in a second. If you have a freeride question, post it in the group. You can post it on this thread, which is a safe space for freeride questions, or just do your own post. I'm interested in freeride. I'm interested in jibes. I might not have all the answers, but then I'll bring people in who do. And I find it interesting. No cam versus 2-cam for freeriding. I think for most people, for 90% of people, you want to go with a deep no cam sail that has a good draft, gets you planing, something like the Ezzy Cheetah. It's a beautiful freeride sail. I don't think most people need cams. What do cams do better in my experience? In my experience, cams help you to get going maybe a tiny bit sooner. They help with stability when the wind is gusty. They help keep the board down through chop. So if you have choppy water and the board is hitting and you don't have cams, the sail will deform a little bit each time the board hits the chop. And that will reduce the power a little bit each time that happens. Whereas the cams will help the sail keep its shape, which helps push the board down and cut through the chop. In the jibe, having the cam helps keep a constant power on the rail, but it's more difficult to flip. The no cam sail, it's harder to keep that pressure on the rail, but it's easier to flip. I prefer in the jibes, I prefer having a cam sail because on those big freeride boards, I like having that power that I can put on the rail to make a nice carving jibe, and I can manage the flip. But if the flip is difficult, then a no cam sail is going to be a better option. Those are the pros and cons as I see them. I'm interested to hear what you guys say. Dennis has a 7.5 Lion. That's a 2-cam sail. Loves it. Depends. Marius has no cam and likes it. Lukaj likes 2-cam. Rune, what do you use? I'm curious. All right, Leonardo had a question about boards. This is a great question. This is a perfect question for a group like this, for our group. Hey, Quinton, welcome. I don't have experience with these boards, but a lot of you guys do. Look, there's 53 comments on this post. So Leonardo, I hope you got an answer that you're looking for. Seems like there's a lot of experience from the other group members. That's super cool. All right, moving on. So this is the video I posted from, it was actually from the World Cup in Silt. I did a little interview with Sebastian. He's a pro slalom racer. And his number one tip for jibing is to stick your bum back, which also the other way to think about that is getting your chest down. And that is a great tip. One of the big mistakes I see people on the jibe and in the bottom turn is sticking their hips forward and doing the turn with their ankles. You don't want to have a lot of ankle flex. You guys have heard me say it. I say that you want to have sort of a powerlifting stance where you've got some bend in your knees, you're bent at the waist, you've got this power stance where you can transfer your power from your core down through your butt and your legs and your feet to the board, similar with the jibe. So check out this video if you haven't already. All right. Christophe is saying he likes the Quattro a lot better than the Goya board. James is saying that he rides freeride on lakes and he has cam sails because they have the gusty conditions, and he's on the Neil Pride Hornet. Cool. Quinton likes cam sails too, but he's had some issues with one of them. Yeah, cams, I mean, it is a little bit more technical, a little bit more difficult on the rigging. All right, Jonty says he had a high wind session. He didn't like his 3.7 Tiger, and he was trying to get their rigging better. It was really gusty, really high wind. So I say one of the things I do when you have strong gusty winds. So if you have strong steady winds, I don't do this, but in strong gusty winds, I do. I rig with more downhaul and less outhaul than I normally would. More downhaul and less outhaul than I normally would. So your sail is able to kind of breathe when the gusts hit, but you still have a bit of pocket to give you some power. That's kind of how it feels. So that's what I recommend. Also, you want to, I would say in those kind of conditions, you want to have maybe a smaller board and a bigger sail. It's hard. Gusty, strong wind is difficult because gusty wind is always difficult. But then if you're on small gear, it multiplies it, because then in the lulls, you really have nothing. You know, if you're on a bigger sail and there's a lull, you can kind of still get going or pump up. But if you're on a 3.7, it's pretty hard to get to pump up. You kind of just fall over. All right, Dave has a question. Any tips about how to read the sets better in a beach break, which are coming in out the back, to avoid meeting the big ones while sailing out? Even when I stand a while waiting for it to look flat, I invariably manage to time it for that monster set to appear just as I am at the back of the impact zone and get clobbered. Ouch. So far, I wait for a big set to come through and then head out as soon as it has cleared. But I have no other tactics. That's not a bad tactic. I do that too. If it's big and kind of scary and hard to get out, I'll wait for a set and then go. It's not a bad tactic. All right. Also, any tips apart from stretching for getting in the groove a bit quicker? It always takes me 15 minutes to get my balance dialed and to be able to sail fast through the break. And that usually results in proper beatings during the time. Same in cycling. Hey, Facebook user and Matt. And Max is saying people flatten their sails too much. Can be true. So, Dave, these are great questions. I think it depends a lot on your specific spot where you're windsurfing. You want to really be paying attention, which it sounds like you are, to start being aware of the rhythms and how to get out. One thing to look for is whether there's any kind of channel. So often on a beach break, you might not have a real channel that is always free of waves, but you'll have an area where the water is traveling back out and the waves break less powerfully there, or they break later there. And so what you want to do is sort of try to get to that spot as quickly as possible and then travel out through that channel, even if it isn't really a proper channel. I don't know if that makes sense. Let me know if that makes sense, Dave. All right, I'm going to keep thinking about this and let's read the other comments. So Alex says, on the way in, drop into the good guys' waves. They love it. All right, this is a joke. Don't drop in on people. But this is funny. Ragnar has a good point. Ragnar says, try to get speed as soon as possible. Yeah. So you want to be planing. It makes it easier for going out in the beach break. I mean, sometimes you won't be, but if that's one of the big things you're struggling with, then yeah. Adrian says, I'm going to assume you are planing going out. Start sailing when the big wave feels like they're ending. Yep. Don't wait for it to get flat. Yeah, this is a good point. So when you are doing the tactic like you mentioned, Dave, where you are waiting for the big set and then you're going, you want to start going at the end of that set, not once it's all done, because there's a lag time, right? And so if you then get in the water and you're going out, you'll get to it, the break, when it's flat. It's difficult to know what sort of wave period you're experiencing. Yeah, another good point from Adrian. Also know that each beating is bringing you more experience and closer to the point where you get beaten less. Yeah, and the beatings can be fun. It's kind of like a roller coaster, right? People pay for roller coasters. This can be fun. Yeah. All right, sitting down in a squat and gently swaying from side to side really loosens up the hips. Okay, so yeah, so this is about warming up. He says, don't do passive exercises before stretching. So this is something that people say, and this is something I've always believed, But then I started to talk to Cedric about this. So Cedric is our resident sports scientist. He's recently been designing a training program for me. And he was saying that the research on this is actually not very conclusive. So if you like to do passive stretches before exercise and you feel like it helps you, then do it. I don't really. I like to do some dynamic stretching. I have a little warm-up routine that I do. It's something that we do on the master classes. We've got a bunch of masterclass alumni in the chat. If you're a masterclass alumni, how did you feel about the warm-up that we did? So we do a warm-up with some bands, like TerraBands to warm up our glutes and some other things. We're doing lunges and trying to get our muscles activated, get those neuromuscular connections on fire, warm up our heart a little bit. So what do you guys still do those warm-ups? Do you like the warm-ups? Did you feel a difference during the warm-up? So let us know in the chat. I know we've got a lot of masterclass alumni in the chat. So I think doing a bit of a warm-up can be really helpful. Maybe I'll film my warm-up and put that somewhere. That seems like something good for the Patreon. All right, let's go to some more comments. Ouch, look at this from Adrian. That's a big wipeout. Facebook user in Hands Thumb is feeling the cold. Any tips on handling the mental side of the cold? Whew, I mean, you're asking the boy from Hawaii about dealing with the cold. I don't know if that means I have better things to say or worse. I don't know. I think having a good wetsuit is really good. And then just embracing the pain. I mean, I've had a lot of cold days in the last few years where I'm not wearing boots or gloves because I don't like how they feel when I'm on the water, and just embracing the pain. And as long as my core is warm, that's fine enough. And just trusting that my hands are going to be numb blocks, and my feet too. I don't know. I had some really cold sessions in Japan about 10 years ago, and I feel like some nerves died in my feet that never came back. And since then, I've been a lot better at handling cold water. It sounds crazy to say, and I don't know if the science backs it up at all, but that's my anecdotal experience. I think just sort of embracing the pain, not trying to always be warm, because if you're trying to be warm, that can sometimes make it worse. One, because you have the expectation and you're fighting the cold. Something that someone told me is suffering is resistance to pain. And so if you don't resist the pain, if you just accept the cold, just let it go through you, then you're not suffering. And that can be a better way to go about it. But also, it's worse when you're cold and then warming up a bit, and then cold and then warming up a bit. The pain is less overall if you are just cold and then you're cold through the session and then you warm up. It's that like in and out. So warming up, you don't want to warm up until you're totally done. I don't know if I'm saying anything useful. You guys probably have better tips about sailing in the cold. Those are things that help me, though. All right, Tomasz is saying that he does do the warm-ups learned in the masterclass before he goes sailing, and it does make a big difference. That's cool. Jörg says he liked the warm-up, but he doesn't do them now. Quentin says that he's a sailing instructor in French, and he does a dynamic warm-up like the raise method, and it makes a big difference. Yeah, that's cool. Ragnar says he does not do the warm-up from the masterclass, but he does do some leg-to-leg moves and some push-ups and stretches to get the pulse going. Facebook user says pain is mandatory, suffering is optional. Totally agree. Yeah, Adrian posted these pictures. That looks like ouch. Alex says that when he's heading out, he launches when the biggest set appears. Max says if it's onshore and there's sometimes no good time to launch as it's just relentless, you can towards you, but if you can identify sets, launch when the biggest are in view, and they hopefully will have broken by the time you sail out to the impact zone. Such a good question, James says. Something I learned from surfing and my surf life saving days was to take your time and watch 3 sets and try and work out the time between sets. Yes, James. Yes, I totally agree on this. So you want to actively look at the ocean before you get in. This is such a huge point. You want to actively look at the ocean before you get in the water. Take 10 minutes to just watch what's happening. Watch what's going on in the water. Watch where people are riding waves. Watch how often the sets are. Watch how people are getting out through the waves. Take that 10 minutes. It's not a perfect analogy, but I think it fits with the saying, measure twice, cut once, where it's like if you take that time to watch the waves, watch what's going on, where people are riding, you'll have a better session. So James, totally agree. All right, let's go on with the rest of his comment. I also watch for the shore current and to use to your advantage and try to work out which way the side current is moving and use as assistance. It's something I've learned to use at local as we have shifty wind eddies on shore line due to the headland. Sometimes it doesn't work. So to come back to restart again. When you're in float and ride situation, it can be challenging punching out. Also, know my limits. There have been times when the waves at our local reef are epic, but the shore break is too much. Yep, this is great from James and very useful. Another thing that he's pointing out is that every beach is different. Every break is different. So Dave, one thing that will be useful is if you, oh, sorry, this is Dave's question, is if you tell us where you're riding, what beach is it? Because that does make a difference. If it's not a famous beach, tell us at least what the conditions are. Is it onshore? Is it side shore? Is it offshore? Is it strong wind? Is it light wind? What's the period? What is it like? Because that does make a difference. What's the current like? All of the above. All right, Tavi says, it's a very specific spot. Send us a 30-minute video from the beach. Oh, Tavi read my mind. He said exactly what I just said, but days ago. So I guess I read Tavi's mind. So many small details. Yeah, and then Tavi posted his own video getting out. And then Dave's post. Okay, so Dave is in Ireland. So this is in Maharati. So we've got some Irish sailors. I don't think I've ever sailed in Maharati. I guess this is the spot. Wow, it looks fun. Looks good. Looks really fun. So the first thing that I see is that it's a lot easier getting out downwind. So the waves are peeling down. So if you're trying to get out in this area and then sailing upwind, you're going to have an easier time of it. You don't want to be trying to get out too much over here. You want to kind of come down and then get out over here, and then you can come out the back and around is my first thought. That is not Ireland. All right. So Malcolm is an Irish windsurfer. What does he say? I agree. If you wait for it to go flat before you start, then you're mostly too late. Yeah, we already said that. What I do is wait for what looks like a big set to start breaking and then set off. You can pass a few waves ahead of the big one easily enough. I then might stall a bit and on the inside on a safe spot, let the bigger waves break and then continue. Also, with good technique and practice, it's surprising what you can actually make it over. That is also another good point, Malcolm. Thank you. Is that what is a big wave and difficult to get over depends on your ability. And if you're better at getting over big whitewaters, you don't have to worry about the timing as much. He also says knowing when to bail is also important. Yeah, and I think you should really kind of never let go of your gear. It's one of my tenets. Try and find a place on the beach that's easier to get out. Yep. So Okay, so Dave, we've got some tips. I want to know what helps. All right, we've got some tips from the cold. Greg says a hooded wetsuit helps. Jörg says that he was out in 2 degrees using a 654 hooded suit and Dakine gloves and 7 mil boots. Hands usually get cold and it hurts the first 10 minutes. He says after waving his arms, the blood starts to flow and they don't freeze anymore. Yeah. Hey, Eric. I'm glad to know that's you. All right. And we've got another injury. Oh, I'm so bummed you guys are getting injured. Ah, this spot looks fun. This is a nice wave. Got stuck in the strap and you had ligament injuries on the knee and ankle. Ouch. The strap screws twisted off and the straps get smaller at the exit. Yeah, you want to make sure that your screws are always tight on the board, and having double inserts on the rear foot strap is pretty nice. Ouch, heal quick. Sorry to hear it. All right, we've got a question from Bart. Tips to keep speed up on the wave when the wind is light on the inside. He's trying to stay over the board and work his legs to pump the sail, but that counteracts trying to keep the butt low to the beach on the bottom turns. So you want to pump before you go into the bottom turn. So the pumping that you want to do happens before the bottom turn. Right, we've got an ad for StreamYard. This is what I use to do the live stream. All right, here we go. So Bart, if you're in the chat, what direction is the wind to the waves? Is it side shore? It looks kind of side shore, I'd say. See you, James. Have a good one. So look, I would say it's side shore. It doesn't look side off, and it doesn't look side on. It looks like pretty full-on side shore. All right, so look at this. So this second wave, you're really getting a lot more speed. And look at the angle that you're going. You're going fully down the line, kind of pulling back a little bit and getting the energy of the wave. Oh, that's beautiful. I love that. So you can see how fast you're going by getting this setup with the wave. You look like you're a longboard surfer that's riding Malibu, you know, going down on the freight train, right? You're picking up all that speed from the wave, which then, because we've got the sail and we're going faster, it also creates more apparent wind. So then you do have more pull in the sail at the same time. That was beautiful. I love this one. This second turn is awesome. I'd play it again, but we've got to get through this video. So yeah, nice. I like this again. Also, it looks like you're getting speed. All right, high five that thing. Yeah. This looks awesome, Bart. I think you're really figuring it out. That first wave looked like you're having trouble with the speed, but these next ones look awesome. And so I think with this kind of wind angle, you really want to get that, you know, think of you're like a torpedo longboard surfer going down the line, picking up the speed, kind of leaning back a little bit forward and back, trying to find that sweet spot where then that apparent wind is powering up the sail. It's hard if you're coming upwind like this in these conditions. And then you can see here that then you don't have much speed and then you're trying to get downwind again. And you can position downwind and then pump the sail lightly. But then once you're kind of flying and in that zone, you don't want to move the sail around too much. So let's see this wave. I want to see you get that board pointed down the line. So here, getting the board pointed down the line earlier would get you more speed. And heading back up like this in these conditions and coming in front of the wave is going to kill your speed. So you want to stay on the wave and stay down the line, and that's going to keep your speed up. So like we saw in all these waves in the middle, where you're just rocketing down the line, that's what you want to go for. So Bart, hopefully that is clear. We've got some good tips from other people. Get your speed before going into the bottom turns. Exactly. Andrea posted this. Stormy weekend in Italy. Whew, looks stormy. Bart posted this from Cornwall. The local rippers. Looks fun. I think we looked at that last week. What film did Dave Kalama say? Boom, boom, shakalaka, boom, Jeff asked. And Edwin found it. 24 minutes in and 20 seconds in Broken Molds. Huh. Cool. Thanks, Edwin. Right on. Right. So Facebook user is saying how to point the board downwind. So in that specific situation that we're talking about with Bart, you want to kind of push the sail into the wind, and so like going into a flare jibe, or kind of like a similar position going into a forward loop, even where you kind of push the sail into the wind and sort of scissor your feet a little bit, and that will start to steer the board downwind. And then you want to make sure you stay connected to the power of the wave, and then kind of in that position with the sail kind of cocked into the wind, your feet a little bit scissored, you want to feel through your legs. And this is a real feeling thing where you want to feel the power in the wave. And so you can kind of be a bit active until you feel that power transferring into the board. And then once you do, you really want to push into it, push against it. You can pump a bit as well to help get that speed up. Pump on the fin and pump the sail front to back. And yeah, feel the speed on that wave coming into the board. In those specific conditions, like we saw with Bart, is perfect, because then you're going into the section, and so you can get a lot of speed, go into that section, get your epic high five. If the conditions are different, the technique might be different as well. You might want to do something a little bit different. But for that specific circumstance that we saw with Bart, that is what I recommend. Greg gave us some tips about Maharati. Yeah, Ireland's got epic windsurfing. I got to go back there. It's been too long. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining. I'm going to get some sleep. Facebook user is saying that he wants to see some video pointing that out and struggles with going downwind. What do you struggle with? What do you struggle with? I want to know what is the difficulty. That will help me to create something for you. What is the difficulty? So I'm going to hang around to hear what you have to say, and then I'm going to sign off and wish you guys all an epic windy week. Thank you, everyone who supports the Patreon. So you're saying you lose the connection on the wave when you try to go downwind. Okay. And the speed. So I would say you're probably sheeting in too much, and maybe you're not connected as much with the wave. But I'll do a little bit of video on this. Let me see. I'll put that on the list. All right, guys. I'm signing off. Have a good week. Take care. I'll see you next week, Sunday. Take care.